Hi, I'm Jen, and this is, the second video in the series of me working on this blanket and using it to teach myself how to knit with a knit sheath. Now, this is just the pattern that I've chosen to be my practice project. It's called the Sheath Afghan, and it's big enough that it doesn't really fit in the screen anymore. It's a pattern by Knit Picks. And a series of miter squares, so it's a whole lot of knit stitches, making it a pretty simple knit, which is why I've chosen it to learn how to use a supported right hand needle method using a knit sheath. You can use a sheath, you can use a leather pouch on your belt. I've also seen it done with particularly long needles, and the right-handed one is held up sort of under your armpit. The idea is the same, and that's if you can keep your right-handed needle supported, it allows you to work the yarn and the left-hand needle in a completely different way, and it allows you to put on some speed once you get good at it, which is why I'm practicing. Now, I don't have an old-fashioned knit sheath, but what I did find amongst my knitting supplies is, of course, a lot of old knitting needles. And I think everybody has them. I have a nice collection of cheap aluminum straight needles. So this was a size 11, and this was its pair. And what I did was, after struggling and struggling, I wanted this little end of it popped off, and I couldn't do that. I had to find a man with big strong hands, and he popped it right off for me. And then I took this, and it's all, you can't see down there, but down in there it's all stuffed with fiber. Take that, my improvised knit sheath, and secure it to my side using a belt. I'll get this one out of the way. And then take what would be my right-handed needle and set it right in there. Okay. Turn around and at a better angle here. So when you're working with a supported needle, you keep the working yarn in your right hand, and because this needle is being held up, it frees you up to throw the yarn very easily. In my last video, I was holding the working yarn and holding my hands differently, and I've made some small but important changes, and I made those changes after I found a set of videos made available by a lady named Hazel Tyndall. I believe that's how she says her name. She's a knitting speed champion. She's really fast. She knits using this method. So I'm doing my best to copy her. And while I haven't achieved anywhere near her speed, it did clear up a lot of my tension problems that I was having in my last video. So what I'm doing is I've got the left-handed needle like this, obviously, and it's held perpendicular. And the working yarn wrapped loosely around this hand, and it comes up over my index finger. And then I rest my right hand on the right-handed needle, but I don't grab it, just rest. And I take my left hand and I use it in sort of an up and down, in and out motion to get the right tip into the stitch, flick, and then the left needle goes up, a little back, down, and I take this thumb and use it to pull the stitch off the left-handed needle and finish. And up, down, flick, up, down, and pull off. Okay. If you've just found this video sitting out somewhere on its own like YouTube, it's part of a larger post. And on the rovingcrafters.com, And if you can track it down, I'll give you the link to this pattern and the links to the videos by Hazel that I'm using as a guide, that I'm using to teach myself this method. If you've watched any of my other videos, then you know I'm normally pretty good at talking and knitting or crocheting and spinning, but this requires some concentration. That's about as fast as I can go so far. Did I already mention it? I don't think so. Hazel won the competition, and I think it was 2008, using this method. She won with 262 stitches in 3 minutes, which is an average of what, 83 stitches a minute, I think. More than that. Anyway, she's really darn fast. And I'm not. But I do like her setup. And as I said, I can tell that the yarn is moving easier through my fingers. And I don't have to be that fast. I'll be happy. I mean, if I could do 50, 40 stitches a minute, wow, that would be fast enough for me. This method, I've noticed personally, and I've read other people observing, that it gives you a naturally tighter tension. It gives you a tighter gauge than if you were knitting in the normal right-handed throwaway, and particularly if you were knitting continental. Which must have meant that it was the perfect way to knit socks or those Gansey sweaters. And since this was a method, I mean, it was used in lots of places, but it's particularly common. It was particularly common amongst the country knitters of northern England. And they needed nice warm socks and nice tightly warm knitted sweaters. I'm not so certain that this method of knitting with the supported right-handed needle and the tight tension would lend itself to something like lace, but that could just be because I have very little experience at it. Maybe after a while, when I get really good, I'll know how to knit this loose enough to make nice lace. I don't know. I'm not worried about that for now. I'm just going to worry about practicing on my little miter squares, finishing my blanket, and seeing if I can get fast. Till next time.